Good morning, family. I'm here with Tori. She's driving. And the girls, and little Chris. I thought I'd jump on here and share a thought I had this morning. Today is January 30th. December 30th, 2025. It is New Year's Eve. And had a thought this morning that was end of year audit, meaning, or came to me as such, like we probably should do an audit between today and tomorrow before we cross over into 2026. That phrase kind of came, and this is something that I think we try to practice. I know at least Tori and I and a few people are familiar with this in the community, where from October to December, we're not waiting for the new year to get here to do something new or to start something. We usually get started the first of the last quarter, which is October. And that's when we start doing our audits. But, October, November, those are still like, it's a good bit away from the end of the year. And I feel like, even though we can move as we're kind of entering into the new year, some things can easily fall off and we can be distracted with the holidays and things of that nature. So I thought it'd be good to kind of get on here and chat about, finishing the year strong and, looking at doing the end of the year audit. Like, what were some promises that you made to yourself that you actually fulfilled? What were some of the promises you made to yourself that you didn't fulfill? What are some of the things that, went very well this year for you, like your commitments? And what were some of the things that you thought were God and good, and they actually ended up not being God or good? It's an audit. And I think we have to start saying, okay, let me look over the course of the year and start thinking about the decisions that I made and how they impacted my life, about the quality time I spent with God and how I want more, or God is requiring more, maybe even, our level of devotion to the word and giving ourselves to prayer. Those are things that can be audited. Maybe your commitment to the business idea that God has given you, or to a ministry idea. Like when we get ready to cross into the new year, 2026, I think this audit is important so we don't take unnecessary baggage with us into the new year. And a lot of times this is why people say, make sure you have all your clothes washed and, clean the house and do all those tasks that, you've been holding off on because you just don't want to take that into the new year. But this audit is like a mental and spiritual, overlook of saying, wow, what have I done great and what can I do better? What relationships were forged? What relationships were lost? How did I play my part in that? And how can I, get better or increase and strengthen the relationships that God has brought into my life? I think between today and tomorrow, it doesn't mean you can't do this in the new year, but some of these things can be worked out before. That way, when you go off into 2026, you have a fresh, clean slate. Your mind is emptied of things that probably carry weight or that are unresolved. How can you look into this past year and say, I really like that about myself? Or maybe look into this year and it's like, ooh, I really wish I didn't act that way. I didn't function that way. I didn't do that thing. I had this thought come to me last night and I was like, wow, I really wish I would have handled that differently. And I really wish that I had the ability to be better in this season that I was in. And so all those things I, should take into consideration. Let's not just go into the new year unintentional. Let's be as intentional as we can, because in our intention, we're going to find great rewards. The scriptures teach us that there's profit in all labor. So there are spaces where we need to be laboring more so we can see the fruit, the profit, and the activities that we're doing. And one of those is reflection. Us being able to reflect. We can labor in reflection and say, Lord, like, teach me out of this year. Like, what are some of the things you were proud of? What are some of the things that I can look back and smile and say, okay, that God was totally in this? Like, Lord, what was your approval? What was your denial that I didn't, see at the time? Help me hear your voice more clearly. And I think when we do these audits, when we do these reflections, it's the ability, it's the opportunity to grow closer to Christ in a deep way, because it's not surface level, it's not shallow. It's saying, Lord, I want to give you access to the full depth of my heart, and not just, the things I want to expose to you. So let's think about that. Maybe there's some things that you all will want to share with the group to kind of help you be more accountable, or to just confess, to get off your plate. That way you don't carry that bondage. Maybe that hidden thing that you've been trying to fight. That's another thing. Like, I know Christ is all sufficient in helping us deal with some of the things that have been a struggle for us. And one of those things is like temptation and sin. And maybe it's time to start looking and saying, what are the areas that I'm tempted in that I haven't been able to overcome just yet? And then maybe lean into that the first quarter of the year and saying, like, Lord, I really need your help to overcome this. And, not saying that it would take the full quarter, but maybe it would, give you the strength, to give you the focus to say, I'm not going to let this thing conquer me anymore. I'm going to conquer it through the power of Christ that's in me. We're not sin focused, but we're aware of his grace to understand what he's died for. And we don't want to crucify Christ afresh again by continually walking in sin and committing sin that he's already died for, even if we know better than to do it. So, what are some of these things that Christ, that the Father, that the Holy Spirit is bringing to our mind? As I'm saying, it's like, some reflection points, some audit points, that can really help us go into the new year in a strong and powerful way. If you're open to share it publicly, I would say just, text it on here, make a video, share with the community. If there's not something that you want to share publicly and you feel like you need to get it off, set up a time with somebody that you can trust, and say, hey, I really need to get this off my chest, or I really want to talk to you about this. I need your help. I need your support in this. I want to be accountable, and work that out with someone individually. Or if there's like a group of you that feel like you're stronger in numbers and you want to be able to, share things as a group, that's great. Do that. But let's go into the new year after this audit and, know that we have totally checked off the boxes and that we have cleaned our plate. Cleaned our plate. Yeah, not like, cleaned our slate. Like we're not carrying unnecessary and unwanted baggage into the new year. I look forward to doing life with everybody in 2026. I believe it's going to be a great and beautiful year. I think the Lord has already started to build a trajectory for some things that he's had on his heart and his mind concerning our lives over the last decade. And I can see a full measure, a full accumulation of the clouds getting ready to pour out the rain so the Lord can have the harvest that he's desiring. And so I pray this message is received well, and I hope that I get some feedback and, we can move deeper into relationship and purpose in 2026. All right. God bless you all. Look forward to talking to you soon.